I almost drove away alone and somehow ended up changing my entire life in the next 20 minutes. It was just after 8. I was backing out of my driveway, already feeling that tight, restless pressure in my chest, like I needed to leave before I talked myself out of it. That's when she stepped onto her porch, coffee in hand, squinting at the van like it had personally offended her. She looked at the roof box, the spare gas can, the chairs strapped down in the back, then at me. "You look like you're running away," she said. I laughed, killed the engine for a second, and said, "That's kind of the plan. I'd been working on that van for months. Evenings, weekends, fixing hoses, rewiring things that barely made sense, replacing brakes, rebuilding parts twice because I messed them up the first time. It wasn't pretty. It barely worked. But it was mine, and this trip, that was mine too. No schedule, no boss, no repeating the same week over and over again." She leaned on the railing, studying the van like it owed her money. "You actually think that thing's going to make it halfway across the country? It just needs to make it out of town first," I said. She smirked into her coffee. Rachel always had that effect. Even in a loose t-shirt and messy hair, she somehow looked more put together than anyone rushing to work. She was over a decade older than me, quiet, divorced. Not someone I ever imagined joking with from my driveway, so when I said half serious, "You could come with me," I expected a laugh. Instead, she said, "Okay," just like that, no pause. No hesitation, like "Okay, okay," I asked. "Give me 15 minutes," and before I could even process that, she was gone. I sat there with the engine idling, wondering if I should just leave before she came back and turned it into a joke. She didn't. 12 minutes later, she walked out with a duffel bag, hoodie tied around her waist, sunglasses pushed up on her head, looking like she was heading out for groceries. Not climbing into a van with a neighbor she'd barely talked to. I leaned over and opened the door. "Are you serious?" "Very. What about your job?" "I have vacation days." "Your house, it'll still be there." That stopped me. "You actually want to do this?" Her expression shifted, less playful, more real. "If I go back inside," she said, "I'm going to spend the entire day cleaning a kitchen that's already clean." That was it. She got in, shut the door, and everything changed. The van had smelled like oil, dust, and coffee. Now it smelled like her shampoo. And suddenly, the trip I imagined alone didn't feel alone anymore. We barely made it out of town before we were laughing too hard. First gas stop, she came back with terrible coffee, sunflower seeds, and greasy sandwiches she claimed were essential for morale. She made fun of my paper map, then lost signal on her phone 10 minutes later. By noon, it felt weirdly normal, like she'd always been there. Then the temperature gauge started climbing. At first, I ignored it. Old van, hot day, long road, but it kept rising. "Luke," she said, sitting up straighter, "you see that, right?" "Yep, super helpful." Then steam curled out from under the hood. I pulled over, gravel crunched. The engine shuddered once before dying. Silence, except for trucks blasting past us hard enough to shake the whole van. She slowly turned to me. "Great start." I dropped my head against the wheel and laughed, because the alternative was losing it completely. When I popped the hood, heat slammed into my face, coolant everywhere. Months of work, and we hadn't even made it half a day. She came and stood next to me, staring into the engine like either of us knew what we were doing. "Tell me the optimistic version first," she said. It got a little excited. "And the real version, hose clamp, maybe worse." She nodded once. "Okay. Then we deal with that version." That was the moment it stopped feeling like a joke. Hot pavement, no easy fix, bad luck, and her still there anyway. She grabbed water without asking. Handed it to me, opened snacks like we were on a picnic instead of stranded. I should have been annoyed, embarrassed, wishing I'd just left alone. But instead, I caught myself thinking, this is already better than what I planned. An hour later, covered in sweat and dust, I tightened everything enough to try again. She held the flashlight in broad daylight, just to lean in and say things like, "That looks expensive." "It's under control," I said. She looked at my soaked shirt, then the puddle under the van. "Totally, but when I started it again, it held. Not perfect, not pretty, but enough." "The verdict?" she asked. "We drive like two people who suddenly respect limits." She grinned. That's new. By evening, we were nowhere near where I planned to stop, so we pulled into a cheap campground by a narrow lake. For a moment, it felt right again. Then the sky turned. Dark clouds rolled in fast. Wind hit hard. Then rain, not drizzle, walls of it. We scrambled, throwing everything into the van, slipping, laughing, nearly smashing fingers in folding tables. "Why are you laughing?" I shouted. because this is awful. Inside, everything was chaos. Wet clothes, mud, no space. She sat wrapped in a blanket, water still dripping from her hair. "I'd like to officially confirm," she said. "Your glamorous road life is exactly as advertised." I handed her dry socks. "You could still go home." She looked up. "I'm not going home because of bad weather and worse noodles." We barely slept. The next morning, everything felt off and somehow better at the same time. Nothing worked perfectly. But nothing felt empty either. We got lost, ended up on a road that shouldn't have existed, and it led to a view so unreal it felt like we'd stumbled into it by accident. She nudged me. "See. Your terrible planning works." That was not planning. Still counts. That night, something rustled near our food. We froze, something small, bold enough to steal half our bread. She grabbed my arm hard. "Don't move." Funny, because she was the one holding on. I made noise. It ran. She laughed again, that exhausted, almost breaking kind. "We're terrible at this. We're learning." She didn't let go right away, and neither of us said anything about that. By then, it didn't feel like I had a passenger. It felt like we were on the same side of everything. The real shift happened in a cheap motel. Rain again. We gave up trying to outrun it. She stepped out of the shower later, clean, calm, completely different from the road version of her, and suddenly the room felt too small. "You've been weird," she said. "I haven't, you have," and she was right, because there was nowhere left to hide. This stopped feeling casual, I admitted. She didn't answer immediately. Then quietly, "I know. That should have made it easier. It didn't. You think I got into your van for the scenery," she said, moving closer. "I thought maybe you were having a breakdown." "I was," she said. "You just showed up at the right time. Somewhere between the breakdowns, the storms, getting lost." She said she started feeling like herself again, not the version that just maintained life. "The real one that hit harder than anything else." "You don't seem half asleep with me," I said. She looked at me and kissed me, not rushed, not dramatic, just certain. Like we'd already been heading there the whole time. The next morning, reality hit. Money, fuel, costs I didn't plan properly. She didn't panic, didn't blame. Just said, "Show me." We adjusted everything, and when I tried to carry it alone, she stopped me. "This is both of us now." That changed something, not just the trip. What I started imagining after it, we still argued, the van still broke, but every problem, we handled it together. No drama, no scorekeeping, just both of us in it. And that's when I knew this wasn't just a trip anymore. On the final stretch home, everything felt heavier. We had a rhythm now, unspoken habits, quiet understanding. And we both knew what waited at the end. Normal life, same street, same houses, same routines. 2 hours from home, the van broke again. Of course it did, I fixed it. She stayed right there, tools, light, silence when I needed it. When we got back on the road, we didn't talk much. Because the real question finally caught up to us. Was this only real because we were moving? We pulled onto our street, her house, then mine. I parked, shut off the engine. Silence. "So I guess everything goes back to normal," I said. I hated it the second it left my mouth. She didn't move. "I don't want normal," she said. And this time her voice shook just enough to make it real. I left because I felt dead in my own life, and somewhere in all of this, I started feeling like myself again. She looked straight at me. Not the version that manages everything. Me. I didn't have a clever response, just the truth. "Then stay." She held my gaze, then smiled like she'd been waiting for that the whole time. She grabbed her bag and instead of getting out, she pushed it behind my seat, just like that. No speech, no hesitation, a decision. "You're really not going home?" I asked. She glanced at her house, then back at me. "I am home."